Commander Elena Carter stood motionless at the edge of the observation deck. Earth's blue-green curve stretched before her like a fragile gem. Though the planet's surface shimmered with calm, her mind churned with the weight of the message she had just received. The Galactic Council, the oldest, most powerful ruling body of the known galaxy, had issued a demand. Humanity was to submit a formal tribute within 72 hours or face annihilation. For over a century, the Council had maintained its dominance through intimidation. Civilizations that refused tribute were crushed without mercy, their planets reduced to lifeless rocks orbiting forgotten stars. Earth had been overlooked until recently, humanity's technological advancements too insignificant to warrant attention. But now, after unlocking faster-than-light travel and establishing colonies on nearby moons and planets, humanity had become visible, a threat as far as the Council was concerned. Elena turned to face the gathered council of Earth's leaders. The room's polished steel walls reflected their somber expressions, amplifying the tension. Political leaders, military officers, and scientific minds filled the space, each representing the fragile alliance of Earth's various factions. The president of the unified Earth government, an elderly man named Arthur Miles, cleared his throat. Despite his advanced years, his eyes held the steel of a man accustomed to impossible decisions. The Council's demand leaves us with no room for negotiation, Miles began. They have sent a clear ultimatum: tribute or extinction. A low murmur rippled through the room. Elena remained silent, her gaze sharp as she assessed the reactions. Some leaders wore expressions of quiet resignation, while others radiated outrage. Predictably, General Marcus Tan was the first to break the silence. A towering figure with scars earned from Earth's earlier wars, Tian's voice was a deep rumble. "We should pay. It's the only way to ensure the survival of our people," Tian growled. "They want resources, fine. We can give them a portion of our mineral exports and some of our technology. Genetic samples? That's a harder pill to swallow, but we can figure out the details later. This is about survival." Miles nodded grimly. "And if we do pay, what then? Do we become vassals? Forced to hand over tribute every year? Every decade? There's no guarantee they won't demand more." A younger voice cut through the debate. Dr. Aya Moreno, the head of Earth's Advanced Sciences Division, leaned forward. "The Council doesn't want mere tribute. They want submission. This isn't about what we give them. It's about breaking our will." Elena felt a flicker of admiration for Aya. Though known more for her scientific brilliance than political acumen, the younger woman had a way of cutting to the heart of matters. "What about resistance?" Another leader ventured hesitantly. "If we refuse outright, can we defend ourselves?" All eyes turned to Elena. She had led humanity's military expansion into space. Every colony, every defense system, bore her mark in some way. Now, the question of humanity's future rested on her shoulders. "The Council's fleet is enormous," Elena began, her voice steady. "We're talking about thousands of warships, armed with technology that's been refined over millennia. Even with our best weapons, we're outmatched." Tin folded his arms across his chest, as if to say, "I told you so." But before he could speak, Elena continued, "That doesn't mean resistance is impossible." Miles leaned forward. "Explain." "We've developed technologies that the Council doesn't know about yet. Planetary defense shields, cloaking systems for our smaller fighters, even energy-dispersing fields. They're not perfect, and they've never been tested in a real war. But if we fight smart, if we make them bleed enough, they might decide that conquering us isn't worth the cost." A long silence followed her words. Hope and dread warred on every face in the room. The odds were grim, and they all knew it. Miles exhaled slowly. "And what if they don't back down?" "Then we die standing," Elena said. "But at least we die free." The room erupted into heated debate. Factions split along predictable lines. Those who advocated for submission, those who clung to the hope of negotiation, and those who believed resistance was the only option. Elena listened without speaking. She had already made up her mind. Finally, Miles raised a hand for silence. His gaze fell on Elena. "You've fought wars. You understand what's at stake better than anyone here. What would you recommend?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. We sent a message to the council. One word. And what word would that be? Tien's voice dripped with sarcasm. Elena turned to face the entire room. Her expression was cold, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. No. For a moment, the room seemed frozen. Then chaos erupted. Tien's voice thundered over the others. Are you out of your mind? You're sentencing us to death. Aya spoke up again, her tone softer but no less resolute. Sometimes survival isn't enough. What kind of future are we leaving for the next generation if we bow to tyranny? Elena's jaw clenched. She understood Tien's fear. Defiance was dangerous, reckless even, but submission would be a slow death, a future of slavery masked as survival. And humanity deserved better than that. Miles let the arguments rage for several minutes before slamming his hand down on the table. Enough! We're out of time for debate. This decision must be unanimous. All in favor of defiance, raise your hands. Elena raised her hand first. Aya followed. Slowly, one by one, hands began to rise around the room. Even Tien, after a long, bitter pause, raised his. The vote was clear. Miles nodded. Then it settled. Commander Carter, prepare the transmission. Elena left the room without another word. The message was simple, just a single word transmitted across the stars to the Council's Grand Chamber. No. Now. All they could do was wait. The Galactic Council received humanity's answer in the heart of their Grand Assembly Hall. The chamber, a vast expanse of black stone and shimmering energy conduits, erupted in fury the moment the message was relayed. Counselor Zharok, the towering, reptilian leader of the Nymar Dominion, smashed his clawed fist onto the central dais. Sparks flew as the stone cracked beneath his strike. They dare say no to us? Zharok roared, his voice reverberating through the hall. His emerald-scaled face twisted in disbelief. Primitive vermin. We offered them a path to survival, and they spit in our faces. Across the chamber, a thin, insectoid figure with 6 crystalline eyes clicked its mandibles. Perhaps this is mere bravado, Counselor Zharok, said Kreshthal of the Skur Collective. Humans are impulsive creatures. They do not understand the weight of their defiance. They will, Zharok growled, venom lacing his tone. I propose immediate annihilation. No delay, no mercy. Let Earth serve as a lesson to every other species that dreams of rebellion. There was no opposition. The Council's decision was swift. Within hours, the largest fleet ever assembled was en route to Earth, a vengeful storm of warships darkening the void. On Earth, Commander Elena Carter stood on the bridge of the Erebus, humanity's flagship. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched Earth's orbit bristle with activity. Thousands of ships, fighters, frigates, and carriers moved into formation, their sleek hulls gleaming under the distant sun. Civilians had been evacuated to deep shelters, and every available soldier now stood ready. Despite the preparations, tension crackled in the air. Aya Moreno arrived at the command center, her usually composed face drawn with exhaustion. We've completed final diagnostics on the planetary shields, she reported. They'll hold for the initial bombardment, but beyond that, she trailed off, unwilling to voice the full extent of their vulnerability. Elena nodded. We'll make sure they don't get a second wave. General Marcus Tien, standing off to the side, grunted in approval. His earlier objections to resistance had softened as the inevitability of conflict set in. He now carried the grim resolve of a soldier who knew the odds were against him, but was determined to fight anyway. Scout probes have confirmed fleet arrival in 10 minutes. One of the officers called out from their console. The countdown had begun. Minutes later, the darkness of space shifted. At first, it seemed as if the stars themselves were vanishing. Then the Council fleet emerged, a wall of warships stretching as far as the eye could see. Enormous dreadnoughts loomed at the forefront, their weapon arrays glowing with deadly energy. Swarms of smaller, agile vessels moved like a living tide behind them. At the fleet's center, Zharok's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, radiated an aura of unmatched power. A booming transmission filled every frequency. This is Zharok of the Nymar Dominion. Humanity, you have made your choice. Now, witness the consequences. Without further warning, the first salvo struck. Massive energy beams lanced toward Earth's atmosphere. They collided with the planetary shields, causing a brilliant cascade of colors that lit the night sky. The shields held, but the impact rippled through the planet's crust. Cities shook, and underground shelters trembled with each successive hit. Elena gripped the command rail as another volley slammed into the shield. Status: shields at 78%, Aya reported, her fingers flying across the control panel. They're focusing all their firepower on one quadrant. If they breach... They won't, Elena interrupted. Deploy the Nova-class interceptors. Hundreds of small, sleek ships launched from Earth's orbital stations. They streaked toward the Council fleet, weaving through fields of debris and enemy fire. The first wave of interceptors targeted the fleet's flanking vessels, unleashing a barrage of plasma torpedoes. Explosions bloomed in space as several enemy ships were reduced to burning wreckage. Zharok's snarl echoed across the Council's command bridge. Do they think these meager forces can stop us? Crush them. The Council's ships adjusted their formation. Swarms of enemy fighters descended on humanity's interceptors, overwhelming them with superior numbers. For every alien ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The tide was turning, and not in Earth's favor. Back on the Erebus, Aya's console flashed red. Shields down to 50%. We can't take much more. Send in the Valkyrie bombers, Elena ordered. Target their flagship. The bombers, larger and slower than the interceptors, launched in formation. Each carried a payload of high-yield fusion warheads, designed to cripple even the most heavily armored ships. They made their approach under heavy fire, several exploding before reaching their target. Only one bomber broke through. Its payload detonated against the hull of the Eternal Dominion, creating a blinding shockwave. When the light cleared, the flagship remained, scarred but operational. We need more time, Aya whispered. Elena's mind raced. They were outmatched, outgunned, and running out of options. But surrender was not an option. Not now. Then a signal came through, a secure transmission from Earth's moon base. Commander, the prototype is ready, the voice crackled. Elena's heart clenched. The prototype, a last resort weapon never tested in live combat. Its energy-disrupting pulse could disable entire fleets, or it could backfire, leaving Earth defenseless. We activate it now, Elena decided, her voice cold and resolute. Divert all power to the lunar array. Aya's hands trembled as she sent the command. On the moon's surface, massive energy conduits aligned, focusing a beam of unimaginable power toward the heart of the Council fleet. Zharok saw the buildup too late. What are they? The pulse detonated. A sphere of energy erupted, expanding rapidly. Every Council ship caught within its radius flickered as their systems overloaded. Engines died. Weapon arrays shorted out. The once invincible armada now drifted helplessly. Cheers erupted across the Erebus, but Elena didn't join in. Her eyes remained locked on the darkened Council fleet. This wasn't over yet. Zharok's flagship was still operational, its shields just barely holding. The battle wasn't won. Not yet. But humanity had just earned its first real shot at victory, and Elena intended to take it. Prepare for boarding, she ordered. The final fight was coming. The Erebus cut through the void like a spear, leading the charge toward the Council's crippled flagship. Sparks flew across the bridge as a secondary explosion rippled through Earth's atmosphere from the recent assault. Commander Elena Carter stood at the helm, her posture rigid, her mind honed on a singular purpose. They had disabled the Council fleet, but Zharok's flagship remained operational. And as long as it drew breath, Earth was not safe. Boarding teams are ready, General Marcus Tien reported from his station. His eyes, once filled with doubt, now gleamed with hardened resolve. We'll storm their command deck and end this. Elena nodded. No hesitation. This is our one shot. The airlock engaged with a metallic clang as the Erebus docked against the Eternal Dominion. Seconds later, Earth's soldiers poured into the alien vessel's hulls. The corridors were cavernous, built to accommodate the towering Nymar warriors who served as Zharok's honor guard. Their footsteps echoed off the dark, metal walls as they moved in tight formations, weapons at the ready. Elena led the charge, her pulse steady despite the chaos surrounding her. Years of combat experience had taught her to keep fear at bay, even in moments like this. She scanned every shadow, every flickering light. They were deep in enemy territory now. No room for error. The first wave of resistance struck hard. Nymar soldiers emerged from concealed alcoves, their enormous forms clad in obsidian armor that shimmered with energy fields. They wielded plasma-edged halberds with brutal efficiency, and their guttural war cries shook the air. "Hold the line!" Tien barked. Earth's soldiers returned fire, unleashing bursts of energy that lit the corridor in flashes of blue and white. The Nymar charged with reckless abandon, closing the distance despite the onslaught. Elena sidestepped an incoming swing, her blade humming as she activated its monomolecular edge. With a swift strike, she severed the weapon's shaft and drove the Nymar warrior back. Tien smashed through another soldier's defenses with sheer brute force, his gauntlets crackling as he delivered a devastating blow to the alien's chest. More soldiers joined the fray, and for every Nymar that fell, 2 more took their place. "We won't hold this position long." Aya's voice crackled through Elena's calm. "Zharok is rerouting reinforcements." Elena's mind worked fast. They couldn't afford to be bogged down. Every second lost gave the council time to regroup. She locked eyes with Tien, who nodded in silent agreement. "Push forward," she commanded. "Break through their line." The soldiers surged as one, their formation tightening. Plasma fire scorched the walls, and the metallic tang of burned ozone filled the air. Step by step, they forced their way deeper into the ship, leaving a trail of fallen enemies behind. Finally, they reached the central command chamber, a vast, circular room bathed in eerie crimson light. The walls were adorned with the symbols of the Nymar Dominion, and at its center stood Zharok himself. He was a towering figure, his emerald scales marred by the blast that had crippled his ship. Despite the damage, his eyes burned with unyielding fury. "You dare bring war to my vessels?" Zharok's voice thundered across the chamber. Elena stepped forward, her weapon raised. "This ends here, Zharok. Surrender now, and maybe your council will survive to see another day." Zharok bared his fangs in a savage grin. "Surrender? You misunderstand. The council's strength lies in fear." In fear, he lunged with lightning speed, his claws aimed for Elena's throat. She barely had time to react, twisting aside as his strike missed by inches. The chamber erupted into chaos. Tien charged, meeting Zharok with a force that sent shockwaves through the floor. The two clashed in a brutal melee, fists and claws colliding with bone-shattering intensity. Around them, Earth soldiers battled the remaining Nymar, each clash a desperate bid for survival. Elena joined the fray, her focus locked on Zharok. She moved with precision, every strike calculated, every step deliberate. But Zharok was a force of nature. His blows were like hammer strikes, and even when he missed, the air itself seemed to tremble. "You think your defiance means anything?" Zharok snarled. "We have ruled the stars for millennia. You are nothing." "Maybe," Elena replied, her voice ice-cold. "But we're still standing." Zharok roared, launching himself at her with terrifying speed. Elena braced for impact, but before he reached her, Tien slammed into the Nymar leader with all his weight. The two crashed to the floor, locked in a violent grapple. "Do it now!" Tien shouted, his voice strained as he fought to pin Zharok. Elena didn't hesitate. She surged forward, activating the energy disruptor embedded in her gauntlet. She pressed it against Zharok's chest, and a surge of energy erupted between them. Zharok howled in agony as the device overloaded his energy fields. Sparks danced across his scales, and he collapsed to the floor, motionless. The room fell silent. The last of the Nymar soldiers had been defeated, and Earth's forces stood victorious. Elena knelt beside Zharok's prone form, ensuring he was still alive but incapacitated. "Transmit this to the council," she ordered, her gaze never leaving the fallen leader. Earth is free. We will not be conquered. Aya's voice came through the comm, filled with emotion. Transmission sent. Elena stood, the weight of the battle finally settling on her shoulders. Around her, the soldiers began to regroup, tending to the wounded and securing the chamber. Despite the exhaustion etched into every face, there was something else there too: hope. Back on the Erebus, the news spread like wildfire. Across Earth and its colonies, celebrations erupted. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defied the most powerful force in the galaxy and survived. As the Eternal Dominion was secured and Earth's forces began their retreat, Elena allowed herself a single moment of stillness. The war was far from over. The Council would not forget this day. But humanity had earned its place among the stars. And whatever came next, they would be ready,